Welcome. This is the afternoon session for Monday, June 17th. And you should have in front of you now the Much Ado About Nothing packet. You should have a blank sheet of paper that you have already put as part of your... what do you need? Go. You bet. As part of your annotation work. And we've just now finished taking the AR test over Red Badge of Courage. Now we're ready to turn towards our next reading. We will be working with the 3 parts of this packet over time. Today only part 1, part 2. Go ahead and look at it. Make sure that your handout has all 3 parts. Part 1, characters. Go ahead and put a red number 1 next to characters. Part 2, the story, starting I think on Jimmy, page 2, right? Part 3, the critical evaluation, which we will come back to after we finish with the actual reading and study of the play. Very similar to what we did with Red Badge of Courage. Now, for your notes, let's start with Shakespeare. Jot down a few notes real quickly. Our important date for Shakespeare is 1600. It's a good, working, easy date for us. 1600. 1,600 years after the birth of Christ, the time of Shakespeare. Shakespeare is considered the single greatest writer of any language. Okay? He's considered that. Whether you consider him that or not is much dependent upon how you study Shakespeare's plays. Shakespeare wrote 3 kinds of plays. He wrote history plays. You want to write this down. He wrote history plays. He wrote tragedies. He wrote comedies. Okay? The history plays are about real people who lived in history. Most of them English kings. However, if you are in your sophomore year and you studied Julius Caesar, that is kind of a history play. Julius Caesar actually lived. Tragedies are Shakespeare's most famous plays. Let's list the famous tragedies of Shakespeare. The most famous you will study in your senior year. It's called Hamlet. The other really famous one that you'll study in your senior year, that's a tragedy, is called Macbeth. Mr. Nash, we're just taking some introductory notes before Miss Laird starts with the packet. Over Much Ado. Of course, you also know a third very famous tragedy, R&J. What do I mean by R&J? Romeo and Juliet. A play that you were introduced to in your freshman year. Right? Right. Another famous tragedy is called Othello. It's another really famous tragedy. And the last of the famous tragedies, King Lear. L-E-A-R. The reason I'm listing these for you is so that you can have a recollection of the titles. Okay? One more time. Let's go through them one more time, shall we? Is that what you're asking me?
No, the comedies.
We're getting to the comedies. Let's review. Shakespeare wrote 3 kinds of plays, Mr. Nash. He wrote history plays, he wrote tragedies, and he wrote comedies. The history plays about people who actually lived, especially what? Especially
tragedies.
Yeah, especially English kings. Okay? Tragedies, let's list them again, the famous ones. Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, Othello, and finally, King Lear.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
L-E-A-R. King Lear. Okay? Now to the comedies. But before we get to the comedies, let's talk about what a tragedy is versus what a comedy is. Tragedy. Very simple.
Bad things happen.
In tragedies, you have a lead character that we call a protagonist.
Juliet.
Yeah, we can think about Romeo and Juliet as the protagonist, Hamlet as the protagonist. In the play Julius Caesar, who is the protagonist? Don't say Caesar.
No, it's Brutus.
It is Brutus, isn't it, right? The character with whom the audience most identifies in the play, that's the protagonist, by the end of the play he's either dead or he's ruined. That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. Okay? Tragedy. Comedies are a little bit different. Here's why. Tragedies begin in order and end in disorder. Tragedies begin in order. Everything, there's kind of an order, but by the end of the play everything's jacked up. Think about Romeo and Juliet, everybody's dead. The Capulets, the Montagues hate each other's guts. Think about Julius Caesar. At the beginning of the play, Rome at least has a leader. By the end of the play, not so much. In other words, it begins in unity and ends in disunity. That's another way to think about it. Comedies are the opposite of tragedies. Comedies are the opposite of tragedies. In other words, the play will begin in some kind of disorder or problem, but will then end with unity, organization. And for Shakespeare, the greatest example of unity is marriage. So almost always, comedies will end with a marriage or often multiple marriages. At the end of Much Ado, we will see multiple marriages, not just one.
Oh, is this a comedy?
It is a comedy. Let's list them. The most famous comedies of Shakespeare. Much Ado, we abbreviate the full title of Much Ado About Nothing. Much Ado. The second famous of the comedies of Shakespeare is called Midsummer Night's Dream, sometimes abbreviated to simply Midsummer Nights. Midsummer Night's Dream. Those are two of the most famous of the comedies. Shakespeare's comedies, his audiences love these comedies, love them. Why? Because he could play games on stage with language. He could say anything he wanted to say, do anything he wanted to do. Much Ado About Nothing. Now let's talk about that play particularly before we get to the plot summary. Much Ado About Nothing is a play of games. Different games are getting played. And you'll see that as we start to read through the plot line with Miss Laird. All right? It is in the end games about love. The question of the play is a simple one. Are you ready for this? Write it down. The question of the play is a simple one. Can you make a guy and a girl who hate each other's guts fall in love? Again, I'll ask this is the problem of the play. Can you make a guy and a girl who hate each other's guts fall in love? The answer in this play is, you bet you can. You bet you can. There's a way to do that. All right? Now, in every Shakespeare play, there's got to be a villain. Even in comedies, there's always going to be kind of a villain. And there is definitely a villain. Don Juan is a definite villain. Don Pedro is a definite villain in our play. Okay? He tries to screw things up that are going to go well. He tries to screw up the marriages. And you'll see how that works. Okay? Now, how will we approach this text? Very similar to the way we approached Red Badge. 1. We'll read a plot summary. That's section 2.
Red Badge? What is Red
I'm sorry. Old Man in the Sea. I apologize. We'll read just like we did Old Man. We'll read a plot summary. We'll then study the characters. We'll then review the plot summary one more time. That way when we pick up the play and start tomorrow, you'll already know what happens. You'll already know what happens, just like with Old Man, yes? Then we're going to listen to the performance and follow along. We're just going to read along, taking annotations, just like we did before, right? Then we'll watch a performance that you will enjoy. It's a great performance of this play. Finally, after we do all of that, just like with Old Man, we'll then take the AR test. Okay? Now, if you'll think about it, today is the first Monday of the second week. Third week. Right? So we're already down 2 weeks.
Are you okay?
Right? We're already down 2 weeks. Right? So, we're going to try and stay focused this week. No absences.
Jimmy.
Right? No absences, so that way we don't fall behind.
Jimmy.
That way we don't fall behind.
You miss
Okay?
me.
Yeah, I might be gone. She's there Wednesday.
Of this week.
Yeah.
You'll have to talk with Miss Laird. If you're gonna be absent, you've got to talk with Miss Laird so that way you can get your makeup stuff started. All right. All right, Miss Laird, we're ready to go to work. You need red pen out. You need your paper out, and we're gonna work now a few lines at a time
It's the same thing.
to understand. All right. Yeah, use the same sheet of paper. Use the same sheet of paper.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we should all be together
Yeah.
where it says the story in your packets. Okay? What we're going to do
What?
exactly.
Don't exactly me.
So what we're going to do is start at the part in your packet where it says the story. We're going to do it paragraph by paragraph. And what I want you guys to do is I may ask you some questions and go ahead and write those down in your answers. Okay?
Write those down in my answers or annotations.
Both. Write down the question and then write down the answer. Otherwise the answer really wouldn't make sense. Don Pedro, Prince of Aragon, arrived in Messina accompanied by his bastard brother, Don John, and his two friends, Claudio and Benedict. Young Italian nobles, Don Pedro has been successful over his brother in battle. Reconciled, the brothers planned to visit Leonato before returning to their homeland. On their arrival in Messina, young Claudio was immediately smitten by lovely Hero, daughter of Leonato. In order to help his faithful young friend in his suit, Don Pedro assumed the guise of Claudio at a masked ball and wooed Hero in Claudio's name. Thus he gained Leonato's consent for Claudio and Hero to marry. The bastard Don John tried to cause trouble by persuading Claudio that Don Pedro meant to betray him and keep Hero for himself. But the villain was foiled in his plot and Claudio remained faithful to Don Pedro. So, we got a lot of information in that first paragraph. In the general gist of things, a group of guys stop at Leonato's house. One of them falls in love with his daughter.
Yeah, whose house? Don Julio's?
Leonato. No Don Julio in this one, sorry.
Leona's house.
What does Don Pedro say that he's going to do for his friend? Hook him up, right?
With some drugs?
Oh my.
What kind of story is this?
Now, that would be Midsummer Night's Dream. We're not doing that one.
What's Mystic Randy?
Wait. Who
Oh.
tried to what? Who-
Okay, so Don Pedro tries to hook up Claudio and Hero.
Wait, are those? Who's the guy and who's the girl?
Claudio's the guy. Hero is the name of the girl.
Hero.
Hero. I know.
Euro.
Italians. Then Don John,
Hercules.
to mess with everybody, convinces Claudio that Don Pedro was really going after Hero himself. We're still in the first paragraph.
I got you.
You got it? Did you write that down?
The Don Pedro what?
So
That Don Pedro was pursuing Hero himself. He wasn't actually trying to hook him up. That's what Don John says.
Is it here on the audio? Again,
Huh?
Wait, is Hero cute? Okay, then I'm Don Pedro. Hero.
No, Claudio ends up with Hero.
Okay.
I'm Claudio.
Okay. All right.
He's Hero.
Second paragraph.
Jimmy.
Benedict, the other young follower of Don Pedro, was a confirmed and bitter bachelor who scorned all men willing to enter the married state. No less opposed to men and matrimony was Leonato's niece, Beatrice. These two were at each other constantly, each one trying to gain supremacy by insulting the other. Don Pedro, with the help of Hero, Claudio, and Leonato, undertook the seemingly impossible task of bringing Benedict and Beatrice together in matrimony in the 7 days remaining before the marriage of Hero and Claudio. So who's our second couple?
Don Julio.
Pedro.
Beatrice and Benedict.
Is Beatrice cute?
So you need to write down your second couple is Beatrice and Benedict. Now what's going on with these two? See, the first couple, Claudio is too shy to approach Hero himself. So he has his buddy do it for
Wait,
him.
who's Beatrice and who?
Beatrice is Leonato's niece. It's a Monday, isn't
Hey,
it?
Sue, stop.
Please, it's going to take us a really long time to get through this.
Benedict.
Benedict and Beatrice. What about Benedict and Beatrice, girls?
They're
They work together.
They hate each
Oh,
other.
they do?
They hate each other. They sit and insult each other all the time. I can't stand him. I can't even stand to be in the same room as him, Beatrice says.
Sorry.
But Don Pedro, who likes hooking people up, has decided that within a week, he's going to convince these two to be together.
But I thought you said Don Pedro was the villain.
No, Don John's the villain.
You guys said Don Pedro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was confusion. I tried to confuse you guys.
So
It's Don John. Don John is the bastard brother of Don Pedro. Don Pedro's the prince. He's the one who's trying to hook everybody up.
Wait, Juan 1 or Juan 2?
So Don Pedro tries to get them married within a week?
Yeah.
Wait, Jose and Jose B.
Moving on. Don John, thwarted in his first attempt to cause disharmony, now formed another plot. With the help of a serving man, he arranged to make it appear that Hero was unfaithful to Claudio. The serving man was to gain entrance to Hero's chambers when she was away. In her place would be her attendant, assuming Hero's clothes. Don John, posing as Claudio's true friend, would inform him of her unfaithfulness and lead him to Hero's window to witness her wanton disloyalty. Oh. So
So
because
Don
it didn't
Pedro
work, he could not convince Claudio that really Don Pedro was going after Hero. So he decides, I'm going to pose two people together in a window being wanton and he's going to convince Claudio that Hero's being unfaithful, that she gets around.
That is not for me. I got my own
So
Don John sets up a couple of servants to make it look like that it's Hero making out with this other guy in the window. And he leads Claudio from below the window so that he can see it. To make it look like, Hero's not faithful, you don't want to marry this girl. She gets around. She's making out with my serving.
Oh, so it's like
Hero's the girl.
daughter.
But she really wasn't cheating on him then?
No, it's
She goes around,
her,
so it's like
basically her
President's daughter.
maid and like his butler, his serving man.
And John's making you do
Don
that?
John's making him do that.
Too far?
Okay,
Get around my teacher.
fourth paragraph. Gentlemen,
We're with you.
police. In the meantime, Don Pedro carried out his plan to get Benedict and Beatrice to stop quarreling and fall in love with each other. When Benedict was close by, thinking himself unseen, Don Pedro, Claudio, and Leonato would talk of their great sympathy for Beatrice, who loved Benedict but was unloved by him. To each other, the three told sorrowful tales of love letters Beatrice wrote to Benedict, then tore up. Sadly, they said Beatrice beat her breast and sobbed over her unrequited love for Benedict. Meanwhile, Hero and her serving woman would, when Beatrice was nearby, but thought herself unseen, tell tales of poor Benedict, who pained and sighed for the heartless Beatrice. Thus, both the unsuspecting young people decided not to let the other suffer, Each would sacrifice principles and accept the other's love. So how they do it is they would set up these scenes where the guys were all sitting there talking, oh, poor Beatrice. She just loves Benedict so much, and he's so mean to her.
What does she mean
Wait,
by
who did
beat the
that?
This
breast?
is Don Pedro
all
and
guys.
Claudio and Leonato. They're all trying to, they know Benedict is back there. They know that he's listening, but they're pretending like they don't know. And they're sitting there talking about how much Beatrice loves him. And then he's like, oh, poor Beatrice. She likes me. That's pretty cool. Maybe I might like her back. And then Hero and some of the other girls do the exact same thing to Beatrice. And that's how they trick those two into...
What does it mean by beating the breast?
She's crying. She's sad.
Oh.
She's hitting her chest in pain.
Oh, beating the breast.
As Benedict and Beatrice were ready to admit their love for each other, Don John was successful in his base plot to ruin Hero. He told Claudio that he had learned of Hero's duplicity, and he arranged to take him and Don Pedro to her window that very night when they might witness her unfaithfulness. Dogberry, a constable, the watch apprehended Don John's followers and overheard the truth of the plot, but in their stupidity, the petty officials could not get their story told in time to prevent Hero's disgrace. Although Don Pedro and Claudio did indeed witness the feigned betrayal, Claudio determined to let her get to the church on the next day, still thinking herself beloved. There, instead of marrying her, he would shame her before all the wedding guests. So Don John convinces his brother and Claudio to go look up the window because he heard that Hero was messing around.
Convinces who?
Say that again?
Convinces who?
Don John convinces his brother, Don Pedro, and Claudio to go look up in the window because he overheard Hero being unfaithful. Meanwhile, Dogberry, who is like the local, he's the constable. He try and keeps the law in this little area here. Catches two of Don John's men talking about the plot and arrests them. But because he's so stupid, and it takes him a really long time to get this arrest and get this news to the people who need to know about it.
You're going too fast.
Okay.
Go
So,
faster.
Rewind. Dogberry what? Captain?
Dogberry, he's the constable,
Okay.
overhears two of Don John's men discussing the plot of what they're going to do to Hero, how they're going to give her shame. He arrests them.
Hold on.
You said his name's
Discuss the
Dogberry, right?
plot that who's gonna do what?
About what Don John's doing to Hero and Claudio.
How is that
So
illegal?
he overhears and he arrests.
Because they're villains.
Oh, okay. Keep going.
So he arrests them.
This
Who
Spider-Man
arrests
save
them,
him.
dog?
They're the
Dogberry.
clowns of the play.
Yeah.
Like, they're really funny.
Yeah, they're
So
very
the
funny.
dog,
Jose or Jose?
dog is what?
Or DB, or however you want to.
He arrests them.
Yes.
Okay.
But because he is a clown, because he is so stupid, he has all of the information. He could prevent Hero from being shamed in front of everybody at the wedding, but he doesn't get that information out in time.
Dogberry?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Claudio sees who he thinks Hero making out with the manservant in the window and says, I'm not going to do anything about it right now. Let's go ahead. Let's go to the church. Let her think that we're going to get married, and then I'm going to shame her in front of everybody.
Shank.
Who says that?
Claudio.
With a big knife?
He literally
Not shank,
Oh.
shame.
Shame.
Like he's going to publicly tell
I heard you
everybody.
say shank, like he's gonna kill her.
Why would he kill her at the
Because
wedding?
she's cheating on him.
I would too, but like at least I would do
So
it
he's gonna
in
publicly-
private, like with the doors closed.
He's going to publicly accuse her of messing around and being unfaithful, and that she's not fit to get married to.
Okay.
I need more writing from you guys.
I am.
It's a Monday.
Mine Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday.
All happened as Don John had hoped. Before the priest and all the guests, Claudio called Hero a wanton and forswore her love for all time. The poor girl protested her innocence, but to no avail. Claudio said,
I need more focus, gents. I need more focus, please.
Claudio said that he had seen with his own eyes her foul act. Then Hero swooned and lay as if dead. Claudio and Don Pedro left her thus with Leonato. Also believed the story and wished his daughter really dead in her shame. But the priest, believing the girl guiltless, persuaded Leonato to believe in her too. The priest told Leonato to let the world believe Hero dead while they worked to prove her innocent. Benedict, also believing in her innocence, promised to help unravel the mystery. Then Beatrice told Benedict of her love for him and asked him to kill Claudio and so prove his love for her. Benedict challenged Claudio to a duel. Don John fled the country after the successful outcome of his plot. But Benedict swore that he would find Don John and kill him as well as Claudio.
But I thought they were friends.
Right.
Aren't they brothers?
So they get to the wedding, and he accuses her of being unfaithful and wanton.
Who does?
Claudio accuses Hero.
Okay.
Hero passes out.
I mean, is she like really, really cute?
Yeah.
Man, why would
He
why would he leave her?
accuses her, and she like passed
I'd
out.
say
right
She
there.
passes out, and everybody thinks she just fell down dead from being accused of
Got
this.
shamed.
So they all leave. She's down on the ground. Claudio leaves angry with Don Pedro, and then the priest who is going to marry them, she wakes up. He doesn't believe that she's guilty of what she was accused of. Neither does Beatrice, neither does Benedict. So what they decide to do is that she's going to pretend to be dead while they're trying to prove her innocence.
Isn't that weird play?
It's really fun.
What?
Is it in
What
Mexico?
guy's name? Leon-
No, it's in
Leonardo?
Where?
Italy.
Oh, I can see why now.
After all this goes down, Beatrice and Benedict tell each other they love each other, and then she asks him to kill his friend Claudio for publicly shaming Hero.
Dang. It's a little much.
She says, if you want to
Wait,
prove your
so
love to me,
Benedict
then you
kills
have to kill Claudio.
So Benedict kills Claudio?
Beatrice asks him to.
Remember, though, in the end, this is a comedy. So you're not going to have anybody dying in a comedy. Not like a tragedy.
So nobody dies.
Nobody dies. Yeah.
You ruined the story.
Sorry, Jimmy. I hope that didn't ruin it.
Beatrice asked.
Now I'm mad.
What?
Beatrice asked him.
Benedict.
Okay.
Kill Claudio.
Mm-hmm.
But they flee.
Don John flees. After he sees that he was successful in undoing his brother's match, he leaves. So Don John's gone.
Whoa!
At last, Dogberry and the Watch go to Leonato and tell their story. Claudio and Don Pedro heard it also, and Claudio wanted to die and to be with his wronged hero. Leonato allowed the two sorrowful men to continue to think Hero dead. In fact, they all attended her funeral. Leonato said that he would be avenged if Claudio would marry his niece, a girl who much resembled Hero. Although Claudio still loved the dead hero, he agreed to marry the other girl in order to let Leonato have the favor he had so much right to ask. Okay, so finally Dogberry, the constable, comes and tells them the whole plot, everything that Don John was doing. Claudio feels awful. And Leonato says, you can make it up to me by marrying my niece.
Who says that?
Leonato. Hero's dad. Yeah. Meanwhile, they haven't told any of these guys that Hero's still alive. When Don Pedro and Claudio arrived at Leonato's house for the ceremony, Leonato had all the ladies masked. He brought forth one of them and told Claudio that she was to be his wife. After Claudio promised to be her husband, the girl unmasked. She was, of course, Hero. At first, Claudio could not believe his senses, but after he was convinced of the truth, he took her to the church immediately. Then Benedict and Beatrice finally declared their true love for each other. They too went to the church after a dance in celebration of the double nuptials to be performed. Best of all, word came that Don John had been captured and was being brought back to Messina to face his brother, Don Pedro, but his punishment must wait the morrow. Tonight all will be joy and happiness. So they're gonna, so in order to trick Claudio, Leonato dresses all the girls up and Matt puts a veil over them, pulls one forward and says, okay, this is who you're gonna get, this is gonna be your wife. This is how you make up for destroying my daughter. She takes off the veil, it's Hero, and they immediately go get married. And so do Beatrice and Benedict.
Remember what we said, we're going to finish with unity, marriages.
Multiple.
Okay. Next, we're going to work on the characters. So for each one of these, you guys should write down the characters, at least list the characters, and maybe put one or two things to help you remember who they are.
This is really important that you get this intel, all right, Mr. Nash? Because once you got the guys' names, you're going to be able to understand it a lot better.
Right. You won't mix up Don Pedro and Don John.
Don who? Oh, never mind.
Don Pedro is the Prince of Aragon, a victorious leader. He has respect and affection for his follower Claudio, for whom he asks the hand of Hero. Deceived, like Claudio, into thinking Hero false, he angrily shares the painful repudiation of her at the altar. On learning of her innocence, he is deeply penitent.
Penetrated.
Penitent.
You penetrated.
So Don Pedro
I was thinking.
Don.
is the Prince of Aragon. He is the one who was going around trying to hook all the couples up.
Matchmaker.
Right.
Who was the one that got penetrated deeply?
What?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
So do we say
You just said so.
No, he was penitent.
Oh. And who was penetrated?
Don Pedro. Don John, the bastard brother of Don Pedro, a malcontent and defeated rebel, he broods on possible revenge and decides to strike Don Pedro through his favorite Claudio. He arranges to have Don Pedro and Claudio witness what they think is a love scene between Hero and Braccio. When his evil plot is exposed, he shows his guilt by flight. All in all, he is a rather ineffectual villain, though his plot almost has tragic consequences. So Don John is the brother of Don Pedro. He's the one who's going around telling lies, and he's
Wait
the
a
one who
minute.
set Hero up.
So was Don Pedro also a bastard?
No.
What the hell is Don Juan? They're brothers.
They're brothers. More than likely, Don Pedro's father was not married to John's mother. That's why he would be a bastard.
Because he's from Italy.
He's really fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so you wrote down a couple things about Don John.
Mm-hmm.
Claudio, a young lord of Florence, a conventional hero of the sort no longer appealing to theater audiences, he behaves in an unforgivable manner to Hero when he thinks she is faithless. However, she and apparently the Elizabethan audience forgives him. He is properly repentant when he learns of her innocence, and he is rewarded by being allowed to marry her. So Claudio, very good friend of Don Pedro. He's the one who publicly shames Hero. Benedict, a witty young woman hater, a voluble and attractive young man, he steals the leading role from Claudio. He spends much of his time exchanging sharp remarks with Beatrice. After being tricked by the prince and Claudio into believing that Beatrice is in love with him, he becomes devoted to her. After Claudio's rejection of Hero, Benedict challenges him, but the duel never takes place. His witty encounters with Beatrice end in marriage. So Benedict's a friend of Claudio's and Don Pedro.
But
He's a sworn bachelor.
he challenges Claudio for a duel.
Yes. They don't ever actually do it.
What do you think was one? Don Pedro?
Don Pedro was not the one who would have been in the duel.
Benedict is the great bachelor of Shakespeare's plays. He swears he'll never get married because he can never find a girl worthy of him.
Oh, so he's Romeo. Yeah.
No.
He's Romeo.
In the end, he
Romeo says
does.
the same
He
exact
does say
thing.
he's going to go out and get Don John.
Yeah, he does. Have you read Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah.
How many times? That's
Enough.
not enough.
And he ends up with Beatrice.
Does he not say that, Romeo?
What?
That he is a bachelor that will never get married, that will never find love after he gets stuck
Romeo's
with.
so whiny. He's always changing
He's a
his
little
mind.
Dude, did I ask for your opinion?
Okay, next. Hero, the daughter of Leonato, a pure and gentle girl, extremely sensitive. She is stunned by the false accusation delivered against her and by Claudio's harsh repudiation of her in the church. Her swooning is reported by Leonato as death.
I need more focus, please.
Her character contains humor and generosity. She forgives Claudio when he repents. So what did you guys just hear about Hero?
Oh, that she's the daughter of Leonato, like pure, gentle girl. Extremely sensitive.
Could you write some of that down, please?
I would do it.
No, you didn't. What was Hero accused of? Being naughty.
Going around
Around town.
like the president's daughter.
What?
Yeah, it's a good expression.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
How do you know that?
I don't.
Okay, moving on to Beatrice. Hero's cousin, although sprightly and witty, she has a serious side. Her loyal devotion to Hero permits no doubt of her cousin to enter her mind. She turns to her former antagonist Benedict for help when Hero is slandered and insists that he kill his friend Claudio. When all is clear and forgiven, she agrees to marry Benedict, but with the face-saving declaration that she does so for pity only. So Beatrice is basically the female version of Benedict. They're both very smart, very witty. She's Hero's cousin.
Version of Benedict. Is it related to the Pope?
These are fictional characters. Written in 1600, roundabout.
Pope Benedict?
So,
Do you have any questions about Beatrice?
How long do we take annotations for?
Until I'm done, so let's just focus a little bit more.
How far have we got to do?
Leonato, governor of Messina, father of Hero, a good old man, he welcomes Claudio as a prospective son-in-law. He is shocked by the devastating treatment of his daughter at her wedding. Deeply angry with the prince and Claudio, he at first considers trying to kill them, but later consents to Friar Francis's plan to humble them. When Hero is vindicated, he forgives them and allows the delayed marriage to take place. So all of this is happening at Leonato's estate.
Wait, which one's Francis?
He is the priest. who when,
Oh, he married them?
yeah, when Hero passes out, he's the one who helps make the plan to pretend to keep her dead.
What a priest.
But we're not to Friar Francis yet. You need to write down a few things for Leonato.
Well, I was asking who it was.
Mm-hmm.
What was the friar's name in Romeo and Juliet?
Friar Lawrence.
Ooh, there's similarities. Friar.
Conrad, a tale-bearing, unpleasant follower of Don John. So Conrad is one of the guys that gets caught by Dogberry.
Is he one of the funny ones?
No.
Oh.
Dogberry catches this guy and arrests him. Braccio, another of Don John's followers, he is responsible for the idea of rousing Claudio's jealousy by making him think Hero has received a lover at her bedroom window. He persuades Margaret to wear Hero's gown and pretend to be Hero. His telling Conrad of his exploit is overheard by the watch and leads to the vindication of Hero. Braccio is much disgruntled at being overreached by the stupid members of the watch. However, he confesses and clears Margaret of any willful complicity in his plot. So Braccio's the other guy who gets caught by Dogberry because they're talking about Don John's plans. And he's also the one who was with
Can you say that again?
Hero's servant in the window. This is who they actually see in the window.
Can you say that name again?
Dogberry?
The other one.
Braccio.
It's not Braccio. It's Braccio. It's just like correcting your grammar.
Friar
Braccio.
Francis, please write down a couple of things.
I have been. You want some of paper? Look at this.
A kindly scheming
Right.
cleric, he recommends that Hero pretend to be dead. His plan is successful in bringing about the repentance of Don Pedro and Claudio and in preparing the way for the happy ending.
So he's the priest. You want?
And he helps make the plan to prove Hero's innocence. Dogberry, a self-important constable, pompous, verbose, and prone to solecisms, he fails to communicate properly with Leonato, hence he does not prevent Hero's humiliation, though his watchmen have already uncovered the villains. So Dogberry catches the plot, but because of his incompetence, a lot goes down before he actually tells Leonato what happened. Josh, put the book away and just take notes, please. Vergis is a headborough, an elderly, bumbling man and great admirer of his superior, the constable. He seconds the latter in all matters. So this is one of Dogberry's men who makes the arrest. Margaret, the innocent betrayer of her mistress, Hero, she does not understand Braccio's plot and therefore is exonerated, escaping punishment. So Margaret is the other one. Braccio and Margaret are the two who are actually in the window. Ursula, a gentlewoman attending Hero, she is one of the plotters who trick the sharp-tongued Beatrice into falling in love with Benedict. First watchman and second watchman, plain, simple-minded men, overhearing Braccio's boastful confession to Conrad. They apprehend both and bring them before the constable, thereby overthrowing clever malice and radically changing the course of events. Antonio is Leonato's brother. He plays the role of father to Leonato's supposed niece, actually hero, whom Claudio agrees to marry in place of his lost hero. Balthazar, an attendant to Don Pedro.
Wait. I thought Leonato was the hero's daughter.
Oh, my dad.
Leonato is hero's dad.
Yes.
Antonio is his brother.
It says he plays the role of father to Leonato.
When they're going to have the fake marriage, when he says that you're going to marry my niece Beatrice, this guy, Antonio, pretends to be Beatrice's father.
Oh, I got you. Oh, but the niece is actually a hero.
Right.
Oh, gotcha.
And then lastly, a sexton who serves as recorder for Dogberry and the watch during the examination of Conrad and Braccio.
Okay, thank you, Miss Lynn. All right, now to finish up these annotations, stay right where you are. Write the word plot real quickly there. Oh, I'm sorry, is this...
Yeah, that's mine.
Write the word plot there. And the challenge now is, how well do you understand the story before we read? Now, granted, you're not going to get it all. Are you ready for this? You're not going to get it all by reading a plot summary. You're not even going to completely get it by just listening to it. You'll know the play ultimately when you watch it. But let's hit the high points to understand, and I'll go back now to what I was saying before. You want to jot down a few final notes here, okay? And then we'll take our break. Shakespeare is playing a game about love. Are you ready for this, Miss Hernandez? Shakespeare will say, love is a whole lot of craziness about nothing. That's the point of the play's title, Much Ado About Nothing.
Oh, should you repeat that? Love?
Yeah, love is a game. It's a whole lot of craziness that results in nothing. Okay? Shakespeare